Hi guys, welcome to another critique video. Yes, I'm doing another one. I have decided to do some more critique videos. I will post a separate video with details on how you go about submitting images separate from this one. For this critique, the images have been sent in by Keith. I've known Keith online on Facebook and YouTube for a while. He supported what I've done with the Canon 500D tutorial videos. There we go, 500D. And the stuff we've done through Newcastle, so thank you very much, Keith. So I thought, even if I wasn't going to continue on doing some critiques, I would do a critique for Keith just as a kind of a thank you for the support that he's given for the stuff I've done and the stuff myself and Mark done with newtophoto.com as well. So a little bit about Keith. He is, well, one thing, he's given me permission to use these images in the critique, so good job. His website is keithmphoto.wordpress.com, and he's 18-year-old amateur professional. Okay, which one are you? First part of the critique here, mate, is you're either an amateur, semi-professional or a professional if you are going to pick a label. Personally, I think the labels are crap and don't really mean a whole lot. You're a photographer, but if you are going to label yourself within or underneath an umbrella of one of those, then amateur, professional, counterintuitive, don't really go together, so I would pick one or the other, or maybe semi-professional. He says he enjoys all manners of subjects and genres, living in Newcastle, the home of my favourite brew, and he's about to finish college and move on to university, so good luck with whatever you want to do in university. I know I've actually talked to you about that on Facebook, Keith, but I won't spill the details in this video. He shoots Canon, he shoots with the 500D himself, and varying lenses, and he's actually included named images, which is good. You don't have to name the images you send in, and he's included the details of where or when they were taken and what camera and lens were used. We'll have also the information on the EXIF data as we look at the images in Lightroom as well. So thank you very much for that. And rather than me reading through those now, I'll read through those as and when we go through each image in the critique. So thank you very much for sending these in. And what we'll do now, we'll go over to Lightroom and we will have a look at Keith's images. Now, as you all know, just before we do that, as you all know, when I do these critiques, I don't do these slow. I don't, or do these fast, should I say. I don't take 8 or 10 minutes like you see some of these critiques on YouTube. Quite frankly, you need to spend a bit more time on the critiques. So I try and do it right. I'll give my input. If something's not good, I'll say it's not good. If I like something, I'll say it, and I'll give general critique. So don't be offended if I say that something's bad. And this is just my opinion. Okay, remember, it's my opinion. You could take the images to somebody else and get a completely different level of feedback. Okay, so we'll have a look at some of Keith's images now. Okay, so here we are looking at Keith's images, and we'll kickstart this critique with the image Hope Building. Just a little bit of background information before I bring the image up full screen. Taken earlier February, just after getting the camera. That's his Canon 500D. The building was an old bread mill that apparently made 1/3 of all the bread produced in Britain. Wow. And was demolished later that year. Taken with a 500D and a Sigma 70-300 APO lens. So that's a telephoto zoom lens. Okay, so we'll bring that one up full screen. Okay, Hope Building JPEG. The resolutions that you sent in are a good size, 1200 by 800. That's perfectly fine. If we have a look just quickly at some of the settings, ISO 320, 168mm, so it's quite telephoto. F5 at 200th of a second. Okay, so quite telephoto. He's kept his shutter speed 1 over the focal length that he's at, which is fine. People say you should add a little bit more for the crop when running on a crop sensor camera, but you're good at 200th of a second on that zoom. ISO 320. Now, some of you may realise that on the 500D that it doesn't really have an ISO 320, so this has been taken in one of the semi or automatic modes where the camera's chosen the ISO, so it can actually choose those third stop ISOs, whereas normally or manually you can't, it doesn't have them. So here we are, having a look at this image. Quite graphic. Hope on the side of the building, graffitied or drawn on there. I say graffiti, it's probably a little bit harsh really. And I've noticed as well started looking at this, I have had a quick look through these images, but not in good detail. The little windows or the vents that they've got here, there's heart shapes, which is quite interesting. It's probably something that you don't necessarily see straight away, and it's obviously been signed by a few people that live around the area. Apparently Otter loves Kelly, or Kelly Wayne. Oh, well, fair enough. And it's a well exposed image. Detail in the sky. The light that was probably actually falling on the side of this structure of the building was probably fairly equal to what the sky was at the time. If there was any great difference, you would see it blown out, or if that was exposed, this would be underexposed. I quite like the framing, although I don't know where you were in, from your position to it. You probably stood at an angle shooting at the building, or I don't know whether the building's got a natural slant to it. I kind of would have liked it level, so it split the frame, or possibly split the frame at the top third up here. But it's certainly an interesting graphic image. I'm wondering actually, forgive me for doing this, Keith, I'm just going to go into development mode. We'll have a quick look and see what this looks like in black and white. The PC's going to take a while to do this. There we go. Poor man's black and white. Yeah, still works, so there's an option. Always look at options when processing whether colour or black and white would work, and then pick your favourite one. But the colour one certainly does work. I'll go back to the library mode, and we'll bring this up to full screen so we can have a quick look at it in a bit more detail. Like I say, well exposed. I'll kind of wish that this was going level across the screen, split in a third or possibly even half of the image. I can imagine that with building being quite run down before it was being teared down, having some great photo opportunities within there, be it with textures or run down disused machinery or equipment. So that would be quite cool, certainly. So quite like that one. Like I say, nitpicking a little bit on the horizontal. I don't know the design of the building, whether it had a natural slant or not really, but I do quite like that one. I'm wondering whether you've actually got any more of that building before it was torn down, and if you have, maybe you can get them printed in a frame, or do a bit of tip tricks where you have three images together shown of the same building or the same thing, maybe. But not too much more really to say on this one. I'm just going to zoom in. Wow, this is slow. I'm running this on a really old PC, so there we go. We have to go to 2:1 and it just destroys the image. That's probably just down to the resolution that you've actually sent in. Yeah, no problem. So as far as I can tell, it's plenty sharp enough. That's fine. You kept your shutter speed high, F5. It's okay, no problem at all. Because of the distance that you were away from it, it's given you a good enough depth of field to have this sharp, as well as enough detail and sharpness in the sky as well. So that's absolutely fine. And we'll go to the next one. Now, like I said at the beginning of, this critique, I've already got my favourite image, which is coming up shortly. And we'll go to this next one, which is the I'm probably going to really mispronounce this, Funigrillo landscape. Yeah, I've got that wrong. I know I have. Taken in the south of Spain during February. I think it must have been on a holiday. Using his 500D with the Sigma 70-300. Okay, another one with the telephoto lens. So we'll have a look at this. And this is at the wider end of the focal length of the lens at 81mm. And taken at ISO 100 f8 640th of a second. Okay, now you might be wondering, f8, why have we got such a relatively shallow depth of field? Okay, yes, we can still tell what stuff is in the background. Now that's because he's gone relatively telephoto in terms of focal length, and he's quite close to this sign where he's focused. So everything else tends to start to drop out of focus, even at an aperture such as f8. Now this one, as an image, I like the way that you've processed this. It's kind of got a older camera kind of feel to it, or a result you might get from film, where the colours are a little washed or seem a little washed out. So I quite like that.
side of it. As an image, it doesn't really do a whole lot for me, really. I'm assuming this is a speed sign, and you know, to be honest, I don't know enough about the place, but say if the number on this sign correlated to something along, with this town, or maybe to what's in the background, the mountains there, and maybe it could be the age of them or the height of them, 30,000 feet, I don't know, whatever, then it may well work. But because as a viewer I don't know anything about the place really, this doesn't really do much for me. You probably would have been better off taking a landscape shot of the overall village, with the mountains or the hills in the background. I must admit I'm quite interested to figure out what this is at the top of the hill. I don't know whether it's some kind of a mast, aerial mast, foam mast, I'm not sure. That's quite interesting. It looks like it's got some great potential for some landscape work. These places that you go and visit when you go on holiday, these foreign places, are great to go and photograph in and about, looking at the finer detail things as well. So don't forget to go and do that. Detail on a road speed sign, not so sure on that one, Keith. It doesn't really do that much for me, but go nuts, take pictures of unusual things that you see, plant life, local life. There's tons of stuff that you can photograph when you go somewhere. Because basically it's stuff you don't generally see at home. When you're walking to and from college, university, or work, you see these things day in, day out, and you kind of get a little bit blind to what's going on. But when you go to somewhere new, there's tons and tons of potential. Not saying that there isn't at home, we just tend to get a little bit blind to it. Well exposed image, okay. If there is some kind of an emphasis on this speed sign for some reason, maybe you'll be able to let me know. Then okay, selected depth of field, even at f8, has worked well on that. But I would kind of want to do away with that, shift my position or find a different location and shoot an overall landscape of that, which you can do with a telephoto lens, by the way. You don't need to have a wide angle lens. You can pick out details of landscapes rather than shooting the whole thing. So we'll move on to the next one. So probably the weakest one so far. Now this next one, shot in the same location. I'm not even going to try that again. Can't pronounce it, I'm going to butcher it. Okay, south of Spain during February, so this looks like a holiday. Looks like you had some great weather, which is awesome. I kind of like some of that weather right now. It's been freezing. And this one is obviously on the beach, taken with the Canon 500D and the Sigma 70-300 APO lens. Now I really like this image. Graphically it's simple. The horizon lines are straight. The symmetry on the lines and the shapes on the tower, the lifeguard tower, work well. You've got, there's not a completely straight horizon line on the sand. That's no fault of your own, of course, but you've got a nice split within the lower third here, and I think you've composed it well where the sea has come through the legs. I think if you had it drop down further where the sea was a bit higher, then it probably wouldn't really have worked if the horizon line of the sea was coming through the top part of the tower, to be honest with you. And that's giving you enough sky. Yes, you've got negative space here, but it's giving you enough room around the focal point of the image. It's nice and simple, clean and graphic. I like the tones and the colours, they work well. I mean, this was taken, I'm guessing, mid-afternoon, because if you look at that long shadow and how high up that sun is, I'll say the long shadow is relatively short in comparison to the height of this thing. So the shadows are nice and hard, and that means you're in midday sun. Okay, yeah, we know the sun is a huge light source, but because it's so far away, we get really harsh shadows in high noon sun. You'll see it when you take portraits of people and on objects that you walk around photographing as well. So really well taken. I like the composition on this one. I would actually put this up myself. If I'd bought a print of it or taken it myself, probably put it up in a bathroom, and possibly a kitchen. I think it would go well along possibly with some other similar kind of images as well. So well taken on that one. Just to go over some of the settings on this as well, because I kind of got carried away with the image. ISO 100, Shooting at the lowest ISO during the day is the best idea. When you've got tons of light, there's no point in upping the ISO unless you want that faster shutter speed for your focal length or to stop action. 70mm, so that's the widest that lens will go to. So he's taking a landscape shot here, okay, with a 70mm or 70 to 300mm lens. You don't have to have an ultra wide to do this. At f8, so he's got a good amount of depth of field, although it has, you can see it dropped off into the background, but it's a plenty good enough depth of field to show the scene. This is nice and sharp at 1/500th of a second. So well done there, Keith. Now, again, with this size, the resolution that is sent me, I can't really zoom in without it going pixelated. Okay, no worries. But I'm sure that's plenty sharp enough, plenty of detail. Okay, the colours look good. Really well done on that one. I kind of want to tell you to get that printed and get it up on a wall somewhere. I don't know if it's your kind of thing or there's somewhere where you'd want to put that up, but I would do. Yes, okay, I know we've seen images like this before, you know, that you're not the first person to take a picture of a lifeguard hut, but it's clean, simple, clean palette, and it just works. So well done on that one. Okay, and we'll go on to the next one. Clouds from above. Okay, clouds from above. Okay, taken from a plane. Okay, kind of figured that one. Unless you can fly, I don't know. Taken from a plane over southern England during sunrise of February 2011. Okay. Taken again using the 500D and the 18 to 55 non-IS version of the kit lens, so non-image stabilized. Now he's in a plane. He's high up. It's probably, I mean, I don't know what time of day it was, but there's probably a fair amount of light in there. ISO 100, 48mm, so he's pretty much zoomed fairly well in. Good exposure. Histogram looks good on this one. I might have just taken it a slightly, maybe a third brighter, but I'm just nitpicking, at 1/2000th of a second. Now it's good when you're photographing from a plane or a helicopter, in particular something like a helicopter or a small, maybe a single prop aircraft, to keep your shutter speed up high, unless you want to drag the shutter for effect, to create some blur, so you can freeze action of the motion of the craft and the vibrations, in particular when you're shooting with a non-image stabilized lens. So good job on that one. It's quite an interesting shot. There's tons of things happening on. You get a feeling of movement in the clouds. You know, the clouds are quite wispy. Quite interesting shapes and form in there. Now I'm not sure whether the top of the image up here adds to it. I don't know whether I want that cropped, or you could have maybe shifted your framing to not include that. It's kind of not really there, but is there, and I'd probably kind of want it splitting a third of the frame if you were going to include it, or not have it there at all. But I do certainly like this one. Now clouds and skies are one of the things that I love. I like taking portraits against different clouds and skies with sunset, sunrises, or dramatic skies when the weather's not crap, which is rare in this country. You know, using off-camera lighting and stuff. So it's certainly got an appeal to me, and I must admit I would love to get the opportunity to shoot from a plane, not necessarily a commercial airline, but a single prop or a helicopter myself at some point, over some landscapes, to try and get some interesting images. So well done on that one. I do actually like that one, and it goes to show folks that it doesn't matter what camera you've got, what lens you're using, you know, ultimately it's what you do with it and the images that you capture with it. And these critiques, like I always say, are very, very subjective, so these are my opinions and my thoughts on them. So if you like an image and somebody else is telling you that it's crap, well, stuff them. You know, if you like it, then you like it. Get it printed, get it mounted, and hang it with pride. Okay, so good job on that one, Keith. Again, like I say, I'm just not too sure on that top section here. Now, I was going to save the best till last, but Lightroom's kind of scuppered that because it's the way it's imported them, or the order it's imported them in. Zombie Photographer is the next image. Just before I switch to it, where are we? Zombie Photographer, taken during a zombie walk in Newcastle. I've yet to attend one of these things, and I think it'd be really cool too. So kudos on that one. Rather jealous actually there, Keith. Using the Sigma 70 to 300 on the 500D again. Okay, now here we go. We'll have a quick look at this one. Now I really like this one. This one is definitely my favourite of the whole set. Yeah, I really like that lifeguard tower one, I must admit. So well done on that one. But I really do like this one. Now we'll go over settings quickly. Okay, ISO 800, 238mm, so he's really racked the telephoto, and you can tell in this scene that he's really gone telephoto because you can see this out of focus character here in the foreground, and the people and elements within the background. Everything seems really close to the center subject, so it compresses that perspective and compresses everything within the frame and makes it all seem really compact and tight. If you shoot something wide angle, it expands perspective, so you would get a completely different look, and yes, a completely different field of view as well. So we shot this at f8. You probably could have opened up a little bit on your aperture, but shutter speed was high enough. Going to ISO 800, I would never really worry about it on modern day DSLRs, even on the 500D, providing you're in good light. Going up to any ISO in crap light doesn't really help you, because crap light is crap at ISO 100 or ISO 3200. Makes no difference. You just get more grain at ISO 3200. But no qualms with the way that this has been approached. I really like the focus on this, which is on the center subject here, and she is either taking video possibly with that thing, or maybe a still. It looks like a pocket video camera, kind of like the flip cameras or something like that. You've got these characters here look like they're having a good time, dressed as zombies with different bits of makeup. Cool leather jacket here. And the main reason why I really like this image is the way it's been composed and framed. Yes, you've tilted the camera a bit of Dutch angle, and sometimes it can work, sometimes it can't, and it can be overused, but it really works on this one, and I think it's actually helps you compose and frame this, and in a way that I like, because you've got these people here which form part of the frame, this arm coming over here, dripping in blood, nice, and going to this arm here, and then this fella here. So these elements actually frame the main part of the subject, which is in the center of the frame. You know, you must have heard people say before, never put things in the center of the frame. Dead center is deadly. I know Rick Salmon uses that, but it really works. Sometimes it does just work. You know, listen to all the rules of thirds and all the composition rules, and then go out and break them. And when you do, you can get things like this. I really do like this image. She's got, oh, I wish I had a high resolution to look at on this, I must admit. Well, she's got great eyes there, kill eye contact with the camera. So wherever you've been stood, she's clocked you shooting, and boom, pointing her camera towards you, and dead eye contact towards you as well, which is just awesome. So like I say, I really like the tilt on this and the way that these elements are framing. It sets the scene, you can tell what's going on. You wouldn't necessarily have had to name this for me, I would have known what was going on. So you've included enough information within the frame for me to gather what's going on, which is awesome. So great job on that one. I hope you managed to get hold of her or find out her name, and maybe her friends, and send a print, or at least a copy of the image to them, so I'm sure it would be a good memory from the day. Plus it gets your name out there as a photographer as well. Anyway, worth thinking about. But well done on that one. That is definitely my favourite one. Ooh, we'll have a quick look at this one actually full screen and get rid of the cursor. But yeah, really like that one, Keith. Well done. Okay, I must go to a zombie walk sometime. Okay, next one, Rammstein. Oh, name of a good band. The Hercules. So we'll have a quick look at these. Where are we? Rammstein Hercs, taken on Rammstein Air Force Base, United States Air Force, Army and NATO. Famous for the movie Air Force One. Cool. I like that movie. These are two US Air Force C-130J Hercules aircraft on the flight line, taken with a 500D and the Sigma 70-300. There's no doubt you really like that telephoto lens. You like shooting telephoto, and I think you've probably used that lens a lot and got to know it. So good job on that one. And whilst this isn't my favourite image of the set, I do still like it. It's well composed, and nice use of framing, nice straight horizon lines. I'm wondering how straight you got these in camera, and whether these were cropped. You know, for me personally, I like to get things right in camera exposure and framing and cropping. I hate cropping myself, but again, it's part of the digital toolbox In fact, it was done during shooting film as well, so no problem on that. So I like the composition, I like the exposure on this one. We've got ISO 200, 119mm telephoto, f8 to give him enough depth of field. I mean, it falls off in the extreme background, but enough depth of field to show what's going on, so it's not like this plane is in focus and this one's so out of focus we can't really tell what it is. We can still see the tail numbers there, so that's cool. It would be interesting to see a shot showing more of the planes, or possibly a little bit less of, so the graphical elements and the shapes of the rear tails were more of the image. But saying that, to show an image of the whole plane and the runway, I mean, you'd need a wider lens, or you'd need to step further back, and I don't know what was on this side of the frame. It could have been a whole load of crap you didn't want to show, so maybe that's why. And if you can see on the concrete here as well, it was a beaming hot day, as you can see the heat kicking off the floor there. Nice clear sky, so the sun's just beaming down, no clouds to back it off at all. So good job on that one. Good colours as well. Well done on that one, Keith. Next one is Anti-Gaddafi Girl. Where are we? He does mention it's a little small. It's 1024 pixels. He couldn't find the original, so he pulled this one off Flickr. But what he does say, it says, taken during a protest in Newcastle during the early stages of the Libyan civil war. He used either a 350 or a 500E with a 50 f1.8 lens. Not that it matters what camera that you use. The 50 prime lens is great for portraits, great for low light. You know, if you're shooting in there inside a building or even in overcast conditions, it really helps gather light. So okay, now we've not got any EXIF information on this. It's been stripped during editing, which I'm guessing has been taken through Photoshop. Now, composition wise, I like it. She's holding the sign there, you know, so it tells people what's going on. It works the fact that she's a young girl, so it's the younger generation, and that's, you know, a lot of people when the protesting on these things, you know, they're worried about the next generation growing up and what's the world going to be like, or what kind of conditions will they be living in, or forced to live under. So I like that. I'm not too keen on the processing. It's really heavily processed. Now that could have been one or two reasons. It could have been the fact the exposure was off and you've tried to recover it, or you've just gone to do something really gritty and kind of, not microphone, and dramatic in the processing to kind of coincide with the feel of the protest maybe. But for me it doesn't really work. It's because we're starting to lose her hair going into this dark black background. I know there's somebody stood behind her, possibly a parent, yet you can't really tell. The contrast and colours are a little bit off also, so I don't know whether that's the direction you took in the processing, or it's just an error on exposure and you've tried to recover it. It happens, you know, that can happen all the time. You've got a good amount to play with if you do shoot RAW in comparison to JPEG, but it can only do so much. One thing on the crop on this, and I don't know whether this was how it was framed or it was cropped, is you're getting quite close to where her ankles are there, and it kind of becomes a little awkward cropping there. They always say don't crop on a joint or too close to a joint. Crop in between, so that would be kind of in the shins, on the thighs, or the waist. But sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But more often than not, you start to think stuck in the mud kind of thing, so you've got no limbs kind of there already. I prefer a crop a little bit higher up. That said, she is wearing a coat, which would mean cropping near the joint there, but you could probably get away with that. I think it might just be a little bit too low down the leg, which makes it look a little bit like stick in the mud kind of thing. But I think watch out on the exposure and the processing. I would much rather see an image like this because it's more of an editorial kind of an image, or, you know, journalistic style. So I would rather see good exposure, good colours, and true representation of the scene and what's going on, rather than this. So sorry to have a bit of a dig on that one, but no holding back on these critiques. So we'll go to the next one. Red arrows. Red arrows are awesome. So yeah, hats off to those pilots. I really like this image actually. You've got a nice blue sky. At least it wasn't grey and overcast, so you just get a washed out sky, because it sucks at air shows when that happens. We shot this at ISO 100, 119mm. I'm guessing using the Sigma 70 to 300. Where are we? Oh look, yep, Sigma 70 to 300. Taken during a Great North run shortly after a crash in Bournemouth. Ooh dear. I'm taken from the cliff edge with a 500D and a Sigma 70 to 300. I mean, the guys that fly these planes are absolutely amazing. And I know there's been the fair share of accidents when the Red Arrows have been running or during their periods, but considering what they do up in the air and how close they get, you know, it's really impressive. One thing to note as well, I've taken this at f8 at 800th of a second. Now, if you've been tracking the action, then 800th of a second will probably stop it. But if you zoom in, if we had the full resolution files, you're probably going to start to see a little bit of motion blur even at those kind of shutter speeds, especially when they're going across the frame. So I would probably have opened up the lens, maybe 2/3 of a stop, or go to 5.6 if it'll let you. I'm not too sure whether that Sigma goes to 6.3 at its telephoto lens. It might well do, and that will increase your shutter speed somewhat and bump it up to 200, maybe even 400 to get that shutter speed up. Like I say, the ISO handling on these newer cameras, in good light, you don't need to worry about it. But I quite like this frame. You've caught the smoke trails, and they're just breaking out of a maneuver or a stunt that they've done, which is quite cool. Now, if you look at these two planes in the centre, quick tip for everybody here, it looks like they're damn near about to hit each other or just missed. Now remember, telephoto compresses perspective, so it's made those look real close. It can be used to tell a story to make things seem closer than they are, but also can be used in the wrong way. I'm not saying that it's bad in this instance, because to get a picture you've got to go telephoto, you've got no choice. You can't stand there at 18mm and then crop, it just won't work. But it does make things appear closer together. So just one thing to bear in mind, but I do like this image. I like the composition. They're awesome to watch, the Red Arrows. They're a nightmare to try and track, sometimes through the sky, in particular an individual plane, or even a group really, because which one do you go for when they split up? And you know, it really tests the photographer's shooting skills, as well as the camera and the autofocus, more particular on the lens as well. So well done on that one. Nothing too bad really to say on that. I've shot some air shows myself, just, you know, during the days out I've gone out, and I'm no expert to kind of judge air show images really, but I do like that one. I like it compositionally. The smoke trails lead you in to the group, and you've kept enough space around them as they've broke off individually to come into their next stunt or display that they're going to do, or next part of the display. So well on that one. It's in good light. I mean, you can see particularly in this one where the light's coming from this side, because that plane's lit here, that plane's lit on the top side, that plane's lit top side and the left of it, and they go dark underneath. So the light source is coming from camera right, or possibly behind you, and slightly to the right. So good work there. And we'll go to the next one, Becky Portrait. Where are we? Taken with the 500D and the 18 to 55, the kit lens on f8 with two constant studio lights in softboxes, and the background is a grey wall. You don't ever need too much of a background for a portrait. Often a clean background works well, be that a white wall, grey wall, black wall, whichever. Okay, and it's plenty enough to make a portrait. Now, this one does seem to have a little bit of motion blur or camera shake, because f8 will give you plenty of depth of field to omit any kind of focusing errors. So I would say, because I can see it just more around the face, not quite tack sharp, and that's either down to subject movement, maybe she's settled into the pose as you've just hit the shutter, or possibly camera movement, because you were looking at the settings at 1/60th of a second. That's a downside to shooting with constant lights, is they're never ever even close to as bright as a flash gun speed light or a studio strobe would be. Hence why I shot this at ISO 400, 39mm. 39mm is okay. I wouldn't want to go any wider, working that close in for a head and shoulder shot, because you go too wide for my comfort getting in close. So going 35mm, 24 or below, because remember, optically you're still at 35 or 24mm on that lens, so it gets a little bit too wide. F5, 60th of a second. Okay, this isn't the best portrait I've seen you do. I'll say that straight away. I've seen better on your website in your small displays, just flash displays that you've got there, Keith. You can see the light is coming from camera left here, so she's lit on this side. It's more kind of a split lighting, and she's got heavy shadow, probably too much of a heavy shadow on this side. It doesn't help the fact that she's actually turned her face away slightly. I think she probably naturally tilts her head that way anyway. And your framing could possibly do with being a little bit tighter on this as well. Now the background I'm not too worried about. The background's actually being lit by the constant lights. If you've had this set up, I'm going to say 2 constant lights, so you've done a main and a fill. You could have done with a bit more fill light, but for this I probably would have killed the fill light. I'm not a big fan of it, and gone with 1 light and possibly had a turn towards the light, or bring it more around the front of her to kind of open up the shadows this way here. It's looking a little bit hot on exposure near the shoulder, okay, and this side of the shirt here, that will happen. It's a white shirt, it's going to go brighter before the skin tone will. Next will be the hair, and then the skin tone here, so watch out for that. But there's a thing with light that you need to consider when you're lighting the portrait, and that's inverse square law. Okay, the closer that you have the light, the quicker the fall off. So if the light's just out of frame here, bright, starts to fall off. As when you get to here, the really heavy shadows, and this side of the frame goes dark. So you can pull the light back a little bit. That will reduce the exposure, so you would need to compensate to get maybe more of an even exposure if you were to do it with 1 light. I've definitely seen better portraits that you've done. Watch your camera shake, or watch what your subject's doing. If they're moving too much, let them know the conditions that you're working in. If you're working with constant lights or in low light levels where you've got to use slower shutter speeds, and say, look, okay, I've got to be really careful with how I hold the camera here. My shutter speed's quite slow, so if you move a lot during taking the pictures, the images are going to be blurred. So at least then the person that you're photographing knows the conditions that you're working within. But this, for me, isn't that strong lit. You've got a brighter side here, and on the hair than on the face, and probably too much heavy shadow. There's tons of things that you can do. You can have them turn towards that light source. You can bring in a bit more of a fill if you do want to use a fill light. Okay, but just mainly watch the positioning of the light in relation to your subject as well. As people turn their heads away, then you get heavier shadow. Okay, if you were lighting from above, for example, then you get heavy shadow under the eyes as she brought her chin down. I'm guessing you know her because she seems relatively comfortable. Okay, in front of the camera, it's either that, or I'm guessing that you forced her into you taking pictures numerous times for practice. But I think we've all got one of those friends or family who we kind of pick on. So fair enough on that one. But I've definitely seen better portraits on that from you, Keith, on those. Now, next image that we'll go to is none other than Prince Charles. Where was this one taken? Charles salute taken during the Queen's own yeomanry parade in Newcastle around October. Used his 500D and a broken Sigma 70-300 APO lens. Oh dear, I think you dropped it, did you? Or I don't know, something happened to it. Remember you telling me? I can't remember. So here we go, Prince Charles. Okay, I like the framing on this one. Nice tight frame. I'm guessing you were kind of restricted onto where you could shoot from on this, so I'm not going to be too critical of the frame, of the background in relation to the subject, because an event such as that, I think you may be limited to where you can get to unless you've got a full-on pass and you can go where you want. The background is slightly distracting in terms of this brighter spot on the window up top. If I were to kind of pick at a few things. Obviously you've got brick walls or corners of buildings kind of coming out of the head as well. They could have been reduced shooting at a shallower depth of field, because on here you are at f8. Now I get the feeling that you use f8 a lot on that lens because it's kind of the sweet spot on it. And yes, lenses do have their mid-range apertures where they're sharper than some others, but don't let that dictate how you shoot an image, because sometimes f8, f11, where your lens is sharpest, is just too close down. You've not got enough light, you're going to get camera shake, or you're going to have to crank your ISO up to 1600 like you have here. I mean, yes, it may well have been an overcast day. I'm guessing it was an overcast day. The sky has become a huge softbox, or the clouds have, because there's nice soft light's just being scattered everywhere. And it's not that it's bad light at all, but overcast usually means slower shutter speeds, there's less light around, it's being diffused by the clouds in the sky. But I do like the framing. You've just cut a little bit of his hand off here, not too bad, but generally don't crop joints, fingers, digits, wrists or hands off in an image. That would have been worse if his hand was more prominent and you could see it more cropped off there. But well tightly composed. You could have opened up your aperture maybe 2/3 of a stop with that lens. I'm thinking it's an f6.3 at its telephoto end, possibly 5.6, 214mm, and dropped your ISO a touch to compensate as well, giving you a little bit of a cleaner image, because 1600 on the 500D kind of gets a little noisy. And I think you had enough leeway on your shutter speed to do that. So well done on that one. I mean, I can't say I've ever photographed Prince Charles, but yeah, it's a well composed image. Like I say, I think you've been kind of stuck in one place maybe at that event if you have got some kind of a pass, and right, you can stand here and shoot from here and they won't let you get too close. So you've got a nice tight frame, fill the frame, which is always good, but you could have shot that at a little shallower of a depth of field, and to probably clean up that background a little bit. It wouldn't have made it go completely blurry, you know, you won't be shooting at f4 or 2.8 or something like that, but it may well have helped a little bit. So some good images there, Keith. I hope I've given you enough feedback on those, and given you something to think about. The strongest ones there, I love that one, absolutely awesome, really do like that shot, absolutely great. And I like that nice clean simple composition there. That one needs to be not in your portfolio. Okay, you've got better portraits on there, and I'm sure you possibly shot better things recently yourself, in terms of better lit things. I've seen things on your website which were better lit, so no offense Becky, by the way, but I don't think that's the best picture that he would have taken of you. So thank you very much for sending those images in, Keith. I hope you've enjoyed the critique. I hope everybody else has enjoyed the critique. Like I say, these things do run a little while, but I want to do it right, give as much information as I can. If you've got any feedback at all on the video, let me know. Keith, if you've got any feedback about the critique, then please let me know. Good, bad, indifferent, whichever, that's fine. I'm sure I'll hear from you on Facebook anyway. I apologise for any clicks or pops that have happened during the audio recording. The screen capture takes a lot for this PC to deal with. It needs updating, to be honest with you, probably before I get another camera. Hey ho. So great stuff. Thank you very much for showing me those images, Keith. Those two that are really strong, I really do like them. Remember what I said about the anti-Afi one, it just seems a little bit overly processed, or you've tried to recover something that went wrong during the exposure. I'm not too sure. It'd be interesting actually to hear about that, but that doesn't really work for me. I would rather see a correct exposure, good colour, good contrast, more of a editorial or a reportage kind of an image. And so thank you very much for watching, everybody. You can find me over at rjbradbury.com, on Twitter at rjbradbury, and also on the other website, Newcastle as well. And there's also a couple of YouTube channels we've got for Newcastle and NTP Advanced, so check those out as well. I'll stick some links below, and I will link you guys to Keith's website also. Thanks very much for watching, guys, and I will see you in the next video.